Hi, Masha.
Morning. How are you?
Okay. It's a hard morning, isn't it? A hard morning.
Yes.
You want to
Very
be
hard. It's very
in
hard.
one place and you can't be there, and
I can't imagine what
still
families must be
good
going
enough.
through.
Yeah.
It must be so hard for them.
Yes. So that's why we're dedicating today's show to all of Chalalei Israel, Chayalim, Nifkei Terror, everybody who gave their all for this country. I thought that I would try and find the chibur between Aliza. Can you put it on me instead of on everybody? Can you pin? Thank you. I thought that we would try and find a connection between this week's parsha and a poem which has become a classic of every ceremony marking Yom HaZikaron. Not one that we hear so much because it's never, it does have, somebody did set it to music, did sing it, but it never caught on. And I think probably because it's so powerful, the words are so powerful, it doesn't need a melody. So we're going to start from Aharei Mot Kedoshim, and we're going to move towards Magash HaKesef, the silver platter written by Altman. And that's where our shiur will take us today. If we start from the source sheet, okay. I put just the very beginning of the parsha on your sheet. And I forgot to take out all the Shem Hashem. Control. One second, just one very quick second. Okay, and okay, close, save. Okay, right, let's come back here and open it again. Back here, okay, I am sharing the screen. Okay. וידבר אדוני אל משה אחרי מות שני בני אהרון בקרבתם לפני אדוני וימותו. The context that the parasha throws us into, and it always strikes me that Mot Kedoshim, when the two parashiot are together, despite the fact that there is absolutely no connection between the Aharei Mot and the Kedoshim, they go together in your head. And somehow you read Parshiot Aharei Mot and Kedoshim as the parasha that comes Aharei Mot Kedoshim, after the deaths of the holy ones. And we think about, automatically, especially in the context of today, we think about Mot Kedoshim, those who gave their lives. Hashem. Somehow there's something very, very appropriate. Well, obviously there's something very appropriate about looking at this parsha on this day, on Yom HaZikaron. And there is something very elusive and very strange about the way Parshat Aharei begins. Because after just telling us that this happened after that, immediately after Hayom HaShmini, after the day when, and perhaps on the same day, when the Mishkan was first dedicated and Aharon lost his sons. And there is a sense that for each new beginning, you know what, I'm not getting anywhere here. There's a sense that for each new beginning in the history of Am Yisrael, it comes with tremendous sacrifice. And the sacrifice of the Mishkan is not just the sacrifices which are brought on that 8th day. It's what Moshe says to Aharon, or the way Rashi reads, the conversation between Moshe and Aharon in that moment when all the people are shouting and rejoicing because fire has come out of the Mishkan, and suddenly Aharon and Moshe realize that within the Mishkan, there are 2 dead bodies. There are 2 people there are 2 missing people from this joyful moment, and they're inside the Mishkan. And then they realize not only are they inside the Mishkan, they're gone. There's nothing of them. They've been consumed by the moment in which God restores his connection with the Jewish people. And in a sense, that, what does Moshe say to Aaron? He says, Bikrovai akadesh. This is what God said to us. And it's at the beginning, it's in the beginning of Parshat of Sefer Bamid, of Vayikra. Bikrovai akadesh. How will I be sanctified? By those who come close to me. And Moshe understands it as who those Bikrovai, who are those who came too close? Nadav and Avihu, the 2 sons of Aharon, who brought fire, who brought a fire of devotion into the Mishkan where they weren't supposed to tread. And this sense that new beginnings come at a great price is something that we feel very strongly today. When we look at the transition from Yom HaShoah VaGvura to Yom HaZikaron Lechalelei Yisrael, knowing that our state rose from the ashes of the Shoah, and knowing that we paid a terrible price for what we have today, and also knowing that perhaps it couldn't have been otherwise, is in a sense to enter into Aharei Mot Kedoshim. Okay. But there's a very strange sense at the beginning of this parasha that we don't know exactly where we are in time. ויאמר השם אל משה, דבר אל אהרון אחיך, ואל יבוא בכל עת אל הקודש, מבית לפרוכת, אל פני הכפורת, אשר על הארון, ולא ימות, כי בענן אראה על הכפורת. Aharon is invited in and not invited in. Tell your brother that he cannot come at any time into the Holy of Holies, מבית לפרוכת, behind the veil, which is over the covering, which is over the aron. You see how the lens is coming closer and closer into it's almost as if God is bringing us into the Kodesh Kodashim, moving aside the veil, dividing it from the Kodesh, from the rest of the Mishkan, bringing us before the Aron itself, with the kaporet, with the shnei kruvim, covering the container itself, the Aron, v'lo yamut. And notice also that the letters of Aharon Achicha, Aharon, are the same letters as Ha'aron. Right? In the center of the Mishkan is Aron HaBrit, and the individual from Am Yisrael who can bring the people into connection with that Aron Brit is Aharon, who's exactly the same letters, just the hay has moved. Ki be'anan era'el al hakaporet. God says, there is a time, bezot yavo Aharon el HaKodesh. There is a time when Aharon can come within the Kodesh. And how does he do it? So the first thing you need is from the pasuk before. Ki be'anan era'e al hakaporet. I'll appear veiled in a cloud. The curtain may have been set aside, but the anan will be there to separate between the presence of God and the individual. And Aaron has to come bringing par ben bakar lechatat ve'ayil le'olah, a bullock and as a chatat, and a ram as an offering. But look at what he has to wear. Tonet bad kodesh yilbash, u'michnesei vad yiyu al besaro. He has to come in a flaxen tunic, which is holy, and michnesei vad, and pants of flax, yiyu al besaro, will cover his flesh. Uve'avnet bad yachgor, and he should gird himself with a flaxen girdle. Uvemitznefet bad yitznof, and he wears a turban, also of flax. Bigdei kodesh hen. This is what Aharon wears when he comes into the Kodesh. And notice what's missing in this description. How many bigdei kehuna does Aharon have? He has 8. And how many are mentioned here? 4. Aharon comes into the Kodesh only with the tunic, the trousers, the belt, and the turban, which all the ordinary Kohanim wear. He doesn't come in as a Kohen Gadol. The tzitz, the golden name of God, which is added to his hat, the choshen with the 12 precious stones in it, the me'il with its colors, with its tchelet ve'argaman, all of those are left behind. Aaron comes into the Kodesh, pashut, as an ordinary Kohen, because he represents all the Kohanim and all of Am Yisrael. In other words, he comes in a uniform which makes him the same as all the other Kohanim. And then what does he do? He brings with him, Ume'et adat b'nei Yisrael yikach, shnei se'irei izim lechatat. He takes 2 he-goats as a sin offering, v'ayel echad le'olah. And I'm going to leave those behind. I'm going to leave out for the moment the ayil and the previous ayil and the previous par, and just focus on the shnei se'irei izim, the 2 goats which Aaron brings into the Kodesh. And he sacrifices the bullock, his bullock, and he as we read in the Tefillah of Yom Kippur, in Seder Avodah, he makes his sacrifices, he atones for himself, and then ולקח את שני השעירים והעמיד אותם לפני השם פתח אוהל מועד. And then he stands the 2 goats at the entrance to Ohel Moed. V'natan Aharon al shnei hasirim goralot. And he takes 2 lots, 2 tablets, goral echad leHashem v'goral echad leAzazel. One represents, or one will connect the offering on which it falls to God, and the other to Azazel. And we'll talk soon on what does Azazel mean. והקריב אהרון את השעיר אשר עלה עליו הגורל להשם ועשהו חטאת. Aaron will sacrifice the goat which has been designated for God and make it a sin offering. והשעיר אשר עלה עליו הגורל לעזאזל, and the goat which is designated by the lottery for Azazel, יעמוד חי לפני השם, will remain standing alive before God, לכפר עליו, as an atonement, לשלח אותו לעזאזל המדבר, and it will be sent to Azazel into the wilderness. And of course, I didn't give you quite enough psukim, so let's add just one more. And then after Aharon gives the sacrifice, finishes the ritual of the chatat of his bullock, and he brings it into the Mikdash at the end of the whole ceremony. Pasuk Chaf, if any of you have a Chumash with you, v'chila mikaper et hakodesh v'et Ohel Moed v'et hamizbeach, v'hikriv et ha'sa'ir hachai. After he's sprinkled blood outside the Mikdash, outside the Kodesh Kodashim, and inside the Kodesh Kodashim towards the kaporet, which is hidden by the incense which he's brought into the Kodesh Kodashim with him. And he's sprinkled blood there, and he's sprinkled blood before the Mizbeach. Then, v'chila mikaper et hakodesh, he's finished cleansing the Mishkan from the Tum'ah of Bnei Israel. And then, v'hikriv et ha'sa'ir hachai, then he brings the living goat back again. ושמח אהרון את שתי ידיו על ראש השעיר החי, והתוודע עליו את כל עוונות בני ישראל ואת כל פשעיהם. And then he confesses all the sins of Am Yisrael, all their iniquities, everything that they've done, pesha, everything that they've done carelessly, b'chol chatotam, and all their sins, v'natan otam al rosh ha'seir, and he puts those sins on the head of the living goat, v'shilach biyad ish iti hamidbara, and he sends it out into the wilderness by the hand of an ish iti, a man who goes slowly. V'nasa ha'seir alav et kol avonotam el eretz gzera, and the Sa'ir takes all their sins with him into the wilderness, v'shilach et ha'sa'ir bamidbar, and then that individual, that priest, throws aside the Sa'ir in the midbar, and in the wilderness, and we don't hear any more of the details of the ritual. It's the Mishnah which tells us how the lashon shel zehorit, how a red thread is tied with the goral shel Azazel, with the name bearing the word Azazel to the horns of the goat, and how it's pushed over a cliff, and how it falls and smashes on the rocks, and dies in the wilderness. And that's the end of the ritual of cleansing the Mishkan anew for Bnei Israel. And as we hear this ritual, we assume that this happens in the context of Chanukot HaMishkan. And then suddenly, at the very end of the perek, we find out that this is not just a law for Aharon, and it's not just a law for this occasion. Pasuk Lamed Dalet, Vayta zot lachem lechukat olam lechaper al bnei Yisrael. This is a law forever, an everlasting law, to atone for Bnei Israel for all their sins, achat b'shana. This is to happen every single year. And until this moment, we haven't realized that. Even Aharon hasn't realized that this is a yearly ritual by which he atones for Am Yisrael every year. And it's an ongoing situation. Every year, the Mikdash will become infected, polluted by the sins of Am Yisrael. And every year, Aharon and the Kohanim who come after him will have to fulfill this ritual to wipe the slate clean and begin every year anew. Shimshon Raphael Hirsch has a very, very beautiful explanation of the significance of these two se'irim. And he effectively turns it on its head, because how would we look at these two se'irim, these two goats, which are brought into the Mishkan or into the Mikdash in later years? It seems to be a perfect example of determination. How do we find out how is it determined which sa'ir will be God's sa'ir, will end up on the Mizbeach, and which one will be thrown off the cliff in the Midbar? It seems to be purely a matter of luck. That's the whole idea. The Kohen puts his hand into the kalfi, into a box, and he draws out one of two he puts both hands into the box, and he draws out two identical tablets. And on one of them is written Shem Hashem, and on the other is written Azazel. And whichever he takes out with his right hand will be for the sa'ir which is on his right, and whichever comes out on his left hand will be for the sa'ir which is on his left. And it seems to have absolutely no connection to the nature of the two se'irim. They're identical. It seems to be a purely random act. And Shimshon Raphael Hirsch is going to turn that completely on its head. So let's look at this. Okay. Okay, you should be able to see the pages from. This is from Shimshon Raphael Hirsch's commentary on the Chumash. Remember, Hirsch is the end of the 19th century. Germany, he split his community off from the rest of German Jewry in an attempt to try and maintain an identity, an educational system, to set his community aside from the path of assimilation, which he could see was literally destroying German Jewry. Let's look, and his mission in life was to reconnect Jews who read German, as opposed to Yiddish, with their heritage, and give them a sense of meaning in the many details of mitzvot, which he felt was creating a sense of alienation. So he's always looking for ta'amei mitzvot, for the reasons behind, the rationale behind ritual. And look what he says about the two se'irim. Quite clearly, we have here the representation of two creatures originally completely identical, who at the threshold of the sanctuary part and proceed on two entirely contrasting paths. They are both similar, b'mar'eh, b'koma, b'damim, u'v'lekichatam be'echad. Ke'echad, he's quoting the Mishnah. The two se'irim have to be identical in appearance, in size, in height, in value, and they have to be taken at the same time. Both are placed in a similar way in the same place. Lifnei Hashem petach oel moed, at the entrance to the Mishkan. The decision Lashem, as the decision La'azazel, hovers over both of them in exactly the same way. Both have exactly the same possibility of being chosen for one or the other. More, the one can only become what he does because he could have become the other. En hagorel kovea ela b'ra'ui Lashem. Both of them have to be worthy to be on the Mizbeach, otherwise neither of them can be chosen. And then from there on they separate into two such complete contrasts. The one, chosen Lashem, suffers shchita, death by the sharp cut of the sanctuary, but is then gathered up in holy vessels and gets admitted to the Holy of Holies, into the proximity of that most holy spot, where the ideal of Jewish Torah life perfects itself as the bearer of godliness on earth. So one becomes the vessel for bringing Am Yisrael closer to God. It makes it possible for Am Yisrael to continue the ritual of avodah. The other, I'm continuing here, the decide here, you can see where I'm up to. The other, declared for Azazel, remains untouched by the cut of the sanctuary, does not suffer shchita, death, remains untouched and unchanged, chai, full of lively self before God at the entrance to the sanctuary, but as such is not admitted further into the Mikdash, but is sent out of its precinct, out of the sphere of human habitation, out into the desert, and there, turning its back to the Kodesh, desolate in the desert, ends the uncultivated living for itself which it had preserved. And both are chatat. Shnei se'irei izim lechatat. Both are called a chatat. The one as well as the other must be meant to bring to our consciousness the same chatat idea. I'm jumping a few lines down. And now here she's going to try and bring this concept home for us. Each one of us, he says, is a sa'ir. You see where I am, where the little sign is on the page. Each one of us has the power to resist, to be obstinate. The ability to oppose with firmness demands made on our willpower. It's on the way we use this power that the worthiness or worthlessness of our moral existence depends. We can use it in attachment to God, in resisting all internal and external temptation and considerations which would lure us away from God and his holy will, in being a sa'ir Lashem. Or we can use it in obstinate refusal of all compliant obedience to God, and to the demands of his holy laws of morality, can turn the power of resistance which he has granted us against him, and give ourselves up without a fight to the power of our senses and their allurements, to fight against which was just the purpose for which God gave us that power of resistance. This sinking into the power of sensuality, in contrast to the attachment to God, obeying his laws of, in a contrast to obeying his laws of morality, is here called la'azazel. So Hirsch is saying that the two se'irim represent essentially exactly the opposite of what it appears. They represent free choice. They represent the fact that we can choose whether to which path to take. And he says the paths look equally easy to follow. They spread out before us almost identical. And we can as easily go one way as the other. And it's our choice. And the choice of whether we place God at the center of our lives and try to live a life connected to him, or whether we put ourselves at the center of our lives and live our lives in fulfillment of ourselves, is the biggest choice. And that is what he says is the significance of the identity between the two Seirim. That each of them could just as easily be the other. And it's just the moment of choice which makes all the difference. I'm coming back to the next page of his commentary. So are all of us, without distinction, placed at the entry to God's sanctuary to decide between Hashem and Azazel, between God and the power of our senses. There in the Holy of Holies, as the holiest of holies, at the holiest of holies rests the Torah, the law of his will for us. Facing this, his law has the decision to be made. It can be made Lashem, for God. We can decide for God, gathering together all the powers of resistance we've been given to resist everything that would tear us away from our vocation, to be near to God, to belong to God, to be like God, and free will carrying out his will, keeping pure and doing good of our own free will. Then we will come in joyful readiness into the forecourt of the sanctuary of his law. Or the decision can be made, La'azazel, at the entrance to the sanctuary. Facing the demands his laws make on us, we can turn the power of resistance which is given to us just against those demands of his will. At the entrance to his sanctuary, we can refuse the sacrifice of our self-willed life of desires, refuse to give up the power of exercising our own will which is open to us, refuse the cut which the purifying and sanctifying divine law would impose on our sensuality. And at the entrance to his sanctuary, facing his law, we can uphold, unmastered, our selfish life of desires, and thereby give ourselves over to Azazel, the uncontrolled might of sensuality, which has no place in the sanctuary, no place in the sphere of the human or national life, which should flourish in the surroundings of that sanctuary under the rays of the divine Torah, and only belongs out in the wild, where this earthly world does not become elevated by the free-willed moral government of man into the sphere of bodily freedom. And the decision is not made for any of us beforehand. Not mar'eh, not koma, not damim, not more or less respected appearance, not more or less greatness, not more or less riches, also not the time at which we are called to make this decision has any compelling influence on the decision. Respected or otherwise, great or small, rich or poor, today or tomorrow, in any state of life, in every degree of power and possessions, and at every time, can each of us be Lashem or La'azazel. And the decision Lashem has only meaning and value because at the same moment, it could have been swayed to Azazel. And the decision La'azazel is only a disgrace to man because at the same moment, he could have become and remained attached and faithful to God. The Azazel attraction itself should have led him to God, for without it, he could never become the free-willed son and servant of God. And ta'ava, sensuality, desires, is not given to man so that it should master him, but that he should master it and guide it. Ve'elav elecha tshukato, ואתה תמשול בו. So Hirsch is saying that we can exercise this power of free choice at any moment and at every moment. And I want to look at a very certain moment, 73 years ago, 72 and a half years ago, when Am Yisrael and a certain individual who had his finger on the pulse and the reins in his hand, had to make a decision, a fateful decision for the entire Jewish people. What was that moment? I'm coming back for a second to your sheets. Screen. You know what? Yeah, I'm giving it away. I'm giving it away and I don't want to give it away. So let's read something. Let's read Magash HaKesef for a second, which was written by Natan Alterman. You know what? I'm not even going to tell you right now when it was written. Let's just read it for a second. V'haaretz tishkot. This is a silent moment. The land is silent. En shamayim odemet. A red eye of the sky. Te'amem le'ita al gvulot ashenim. Slowly dims over smoking borders. Ve'uma ta'amod. קרועת לב אך נושמת, לקבל את הנס, האחד אין שני. A nation stands, heart torn, heart broken, but breathing, to receive the flag, the one, there is no other. היא לטקס תיקון, she prepares for the ceremony. היא תקום למול סהר, she stands before the moon. ועמדה טרם יום אותה חג ואימה, and stands before day, dressed in festiveness and fear. אז מנגד יצאו נערה ונער. Then, from before her, step out a youth and a young woman. ואט אט יצעדו הם אל מול האומה. And slowly they march in front of the nation. לובשי חול וחגור. They're wearing uniform and girded for battle. וכבדי נעליים, and their shoes are heavy. בנתיב יעלו הם, הלוך וחרש. They ascend by the path, walking in silence. לא החליפו בגדם, they haven't changed their clothes. לא מחו עוד במים, they've not yet wiped away with water. את עקבות יום הפרך וליל קו האש, the remains of the day of oppression and the night on the front line. עייפים עד בלי קץ. They're tired beyond tired. נזירים ממרגוע. Set aside from sleep. ונוטפים תעללי נעורים עבריים. And they drip with the dew of Hebrew youthfulness. דום השניים. Come close, and there's no way of knowing, there's no sign if they're living or if they're living or if they're shot dead. אז תשאל האומה שטופת דמע וקסם ואמרה, מי אתם? והשניים שוקטים יענו לה, אנחנו מגש הכסף, שעליו ניתנה מדינת היהודים. The nation asked, drenched with tears and enchantment, and asks, who are you? And the two quietly answer her, we are the silver platter on which the state of the Jews has been given to you. כך יאמרו, ונפלו לרגלה עוטפי צל. So they say, and they drop at her feet, covered in shadows. והשאר יסופר בתולדות ישראל. And the rest will be told in the history of Israel. I am going to unmute you for a second and ask you, when does it sound like this poem was written? Manage participants.
Around the time of the establishment of the state?
That's what you would think, right? Do you think it's before the War of Independence or after the War of Independence?
Maybe during the war.
Right, well, you'd think that it's when everything's clear cut, there's a war going on, but there's a state, right? That's what you would assume. And this is Natan Alterman expressing the gratitude of Am Yisrael for those who gave their lives, the many who gave their lives in the struggle to create the state. Okay, now let's look a little bit further on the page. This was written in December 1947. The UN vote on partition. I'm going to stop. I'm going to mute you now. This was written 4 days after, not 4 days, this was written about 2 weeks after the UN vote on partition. Four days before it was published in Haaretz. Can everyone hear me? Okay. Why do I feel like nobody can hear me?
I hear you.
We can
Okay,
hear
fine.
you. I can hear you.
Okay, good. The UN vote on partition was 29th of November, Kaftet November in 1947. 2 weeks later, Chaim Weizmann spoke at a fundraiser for a United Jewish Appeal rally in Atlantic City. And in his speech there, he said the following. It was translated afterwards and published by Haaretz 4 days before Alterman published this poem, also in Haaretz. Shum medina eina nitenet al Magash shel Kesef. No state is ever given on a silver platter. Tochnit hachaluka eina makna leYehudim ela sikui. This decision of the United Nations to partition Palestine gives the Jews nothing more than a chance. And he was absolutely right. From the moment that the United Nations decision was taken, and from the night after all the euphoria in the streets of Tel Aviv and everywhere else in mandate Palestine, Arab riots broke out in greater intensity than in 1936 or in 1942, and And there was a sense that war had already started. And there was absolutely no guarantee that if a Jewish state was declared, and everybody was telling Ben Gurion that the last thing they should do was declare a state. If a Jewish state was declared, the assumption was that it would be wiped out by all the nations, all the Arab nations surrounding it, and the Arabs living within it in a very short time. And there was immediately an arms embargo on Palestine. The British wouldn't allow any purchases of ammunition and military equipment to reach the shores of the country. Everything that any plans that Ben Gurion thought should be put into effect had to be illicit, had to be smuggled. There are all the stories of how Israel got planes, how pre-state Israel got planes from Czechoslovakia and ammunition and the Altalena. The Altalena was not primarily a ship bearing of immigrants, of illegal immigrants. It was primarily a ship of ammunition. And the sense was that it was absolutely not a clear decision, to declare a state, and should a state be declared, that it would survive more than a few months was not clear to anybody at all. And therefore it was almost like the Sa'ir la-Azazel and the Sa'ir la-Hashem, which way the Jewish community, the Yishuv, would choose to go in May 1948. They could have chosen to ask for international protection, for a part of Palestine, which would be a homeland would be a shelter for the Jewish people, instead of taking responsibility for themselves. It would have been a very easy thing to do. It would have been a very rational thing to do. And I just want to realize how al-eze talui al-blima, how everything was balanced almost equally, one way or the other. It was the choice of a moment. And it was Ben Gurion who made that choice, but he made the choice in the knowledge that he had to make the choice in the knowledge that there was a nation behind him. In that moment, he was like Nachshon ben Aminadav stepping into the Red Sea. But he had to know that the people would follow. So Altman wrote the poem Magash HaKesef, not knowing what the results of the fighting, which was already beginning, would be. And it's not surprising that it's his most famous poem, because essentially it turned out to be a prophecy. As much as a prophecy as Herzl, writing in his diary in 1898, in Basel, I created the Jewish state. in 5 years or in 50 years, it will be a reality. And it was 50. But nobody knew it at the time. And so Nathan Alterman's poem reads as much as a prophecy as a word of thanks, as a prayer of thanksgiving. He wrote it not knowing what the outcome would be. He wrote it mitoch emunah. Let's come back to it for a second. The land is still, haaretz tishkot. This vision of smoking borders and a nation standing to receive the flag is a vision of the end of the war. But it's written at the war's beginning. And this personification of Am Yisrael, Ummah, stands with the sense, and this wouldn't happen for another 6 months when Alterman wrote the poem. And nobody knew that it would happen. Hila tekes tikon. She prepares for the ceremony. The ceremony is the ceremony of declaring the state. But it hasn't happened yet. And Alterman is convinced that it will happen. But he knows that it will come at a terrible price. And from opposite her step out two, Na'ara v'Na'ar, like the Sa'ir Chaim and like the Sa'ir LaHashem and Sa'ir LaAzazel. And together they walk towards the Ummah. And they are still and they are battle weary and they're clad in uniform, just like the Kohen Gadol on Yom Kippurim, who wears the uniform of the ordinary priest, not the ornaments of the high priest. Lovshei chol v'chagor. They're dressed, chol, in the ordinary clothes, v'chagor, and girded. And they walk silently, and they're stained with the stains of battle and lel kafaesh. And in a sense, we're back in the moment of Aharei mot Kedoshim, when the fires come down from heaven, when the cannons have roared, when the cities have burned. And it's not a moment of rina, but it's a moment of tremendous thankfulness. It's not a moment of joy. It's a moment of silence. Dom hashnayim yigshu ve'amdu livlinoah. They walk and they stop and they're silent. Ve'en ot im chayim hem or im yeruyim. And there's nothing to distinguish them in their silence, in their stillness, from living or from dead. And what makes the difference? What makes the difference is the question asked by the nation. Az tish'al ha'uma, mi atem, who are you? And the two answer her with the expression that Nathan Alterman borrowed from Chaim Weizmann, who was telling the Jewish nation in America, all over the diaspora, in Eretz Yisrael, not yet a Jewish state, that it depended on them if there would in truth be a Jewish state. What was needed was a Magash HaKesef, a silver platter. And some provided silver for that platter from Chutz La'aretz. And some gave their lives for that platter within the borders of Eretz Yisrael. But all of them, אנחנו מגש הכסף, שעליו ניתנה מדינת היהודים. What Chaim Weizmann Altman is said is not true. It's not true that no state is given on a silver platter. The question is, what is the silver platter? And the silver platter of Medinat Israel is its people, young and old, women and men, all parts of society. Everybody gave what they could, what they had to, what was the goral that was placed upon them. And in a sense, and it seems like goral. It seems that who lives and who dies in war is goral, is not our choice. And yet, there is a choice about it. Because without the choices of Am Yisrael, there would be no Jewish state to fight for, no Jewish state to die for. Kach yamu, v'naflu leragla otfei tzel. So they spoke and fell at her feet in darkness, drenched in shadow. V'ash'ar yisupar b'toldot Yisrael. The rest is history. On your sheet, I put a quite nice translation, which is the rhyming translation of the poem. So you have it if you want it. You know, Aliza, we could send the sheets to everybody. And I'm going to end here. לזכרם של כל הנופלים, and with thanks for the Medina that God has given us through our choices to be a Sa'ir LaHashem. And I'm wishing us all a special Yom HaAtzmaut, different but special, in the same way that this Yom HaZikaron is different and painful, but also special. I suppose I'm going to finish by saying Chag Sameach. Okay.
Thank you, Sarah Jo.
Thank you very
Very
much.
So our time is
It was wonderful again.
Thank you.
okay. So as you can
Thank
see, what
you.
I'm doing is I've given up on looking for archaeology because there isn't any archaeology going on anymore at the moment, anyway. And I am digging in the Parsha for things which have inspired me and can inspire us. And I hope that works for you. I think it works for me. And we'll take every week as it comes. Maybe I don't know if we're going to finish